Hello and welcome back to Will, a Wonderful World. Let's first off get our letters out. One for Liwen, one for Alicia, and one for Spotty. Why is that in a different line? Alright, you know what? Let's do that. My late daddy used to lecture me, saying that it was dangerous for us to have a predictable daily routine, as the humans might be able to track our activities. Despite that, I had developed the habit of visiting the fresh seafood store at the corner of the street every day at noon. Today, as usual, I was tank shopping, the tanks in the lobby, pondering the most important question to me. What was for lunch? The fish in the left tank were all too big. The fish in the tank next to my feet looked delicious, but there were only 6 of them left and it would be too obvious if I stole one. I decided that I would go with the tank on the top right corner. No one would notice if one fish was missing as there were so many in it. And they had fewer bones too. Most importantly, they were really fresh. I hunched my back and was about to jump up when my ears picked up a tiny noise behind me. The owner had just come into the lobby from the back. I quickly hid behind a tank and watched as he opened the roller door, washed the ground in front of the entrance and sat down to wait for the first order of the day. The owner had blonde hair and blue eyes, which was not common in this city. The other humans called him Alex. I sneaked up to the door and meowed softly, pretending that I had just arrived. Following the principle of not trusting humans, I would never intentionally expose my tracks to humans. Still, sometimes I wondered if I needed to be so careful around these humans whose every move was always so predictable. Take this guy for instance. I was sure he would not chase me off. Hey, here you are. Just wait there for a second. A couple of minutes later, he placed a glass in front of me and poured me half a glass of milk. Oh, it smelled so good. Milk is truly a cat's best friend. But then I realized I wouldn't be getting any fish today. I meowed at the owner with my cutest expression. I want a full glass. He scratched his chin, seemed to understand something, and went to go and grab something from a cabinet. Then he put a few pieces of dried fish in front of me. Ooh. After Daddy had passed away, I spent a whole month eating the dried fish that we had saved together. Ever since then, even the sight of dried fish has been enough to make me sick. He pet me on the head. In the end, as a stray cat, I did not have the luxury to be picky about food. Besides, as long as I got along with this human, I could come back often and steal more fresh fish. So I bent my neck and rubbed my head against his hand, pretending to be a docile little kitty, and meowed happily at him. For the record, I was not actually happy. I was licking the milk with my head down when a strong smell of alcohol almost choked me. Psst. Someone spat his phlegm into the nearest fish tank. Psst. Here comes trouble. A man with black hair stood in front of the shop. A half-empty beer bottle was dangling from his hand, making a splashing sound. His eyes were wandering and unfocused. I recognized him. He lived in a small house that was the highest one in the community in the hills. Both his wife and his son had blonde hair and blue eyes. They were much better looking than him. Although I had not seen them for a while, I heard that the wife had committed suicide. The owner's eyes stayed fixated on his newspaper, but his hands were trembling. Well, as far as I knew, the relationship between the owner and the other guy's family had been complicated, to say the least. The black-haired man's blonde wife had often been seen hanging out with the owner in a very intimate way. Whenever the neighbors nearby saw them together, they would gossip about it. The owner was very concerned, but the woman didn't seem to care at all. Once I heard some humans chatting that the blonde woman had some kind of illness. What kind of illness would make people behave like that? I couldn't understand. The man had always been very nice to his wife. But the wife was a dragon lady. Not only did she have an affair, she would even beat up her husband and her son. Once I even heard her calling her own son a bastard. He looked so much like her, how could he not be her son? Well, it was terrible. As the days went by, the man began to lose his spirit too, and he wouldn't go anywhere without alcohol. But the one who had suffered the most must be the little boy. He was so pretty and looked nothing like the other kids, so no other children would play with him. Sometimes I would run into the boy, and if I had nothing else to do, I'd play with him for a little while. If he happened to have some change on him, he would even buy me some milk. Compared to his parents, the kid was almost like an angel with catnip. Anyway, it was not a normal family. The man stared at the owner for a while. His mouth squeezed out the psst. Then his eyes turned to me. He crouched down and knocked over the glass. All of the milk spilled out. Some even got on my paws. It wasn't the first time this had happened, but the owner still didn't move at all, as if it had nothing to do with him. Damn you, stupid human. How dare you interrupt my meal? You wait there. I stared at the stone-faced man, waving my fist. I swear I'm going to stuff dead rats in your bed tonight. Spotty. Alright. I picked a random bottle from hundreds of bottles of fine wine in the underground wine cellar and put it on the luxurious short table in front of the old man. I've forgotten where we are now. He nodded with approval and popped the cork. The bright red liquid was poured into an exquisite-looking wine glass. It was swirling and glistening like flowing ruby. Drink it, drink it, drink it. I was standing next to him. Sweat was pouring out of my forehead. As soon as he drank the wine that had just been flavored by me, I would unquestionably become a murderer. I would no longer be a good Catholic. But I had no other choice. I would not let myself be tortured to death in this damned place. I especially would not let myself die without ever seeing Carlos again. Now I remembered what we've got, like where we are. Alicia has been pretty much, I'd say, released after the doctor visited her, after she had a fever. And she stole what I assume was poison. I think she stole the poison pills from him. And so she now uses those poisonous pills in the drink of her, what would you call that? Of her captor? Maybe. Of the men who bought her. He had killed so many innocent people, and I had every reason to send him to his final judgment in front of the Heavenly Father. Manigia's lips had already touched the glass, when the housekeeper knocked on the door and informed him that there was a visitor. A man with only one arm was sitting on the sofa in the living room. A couple of tall, muscular bodyguards were standing behind him, ready for instructions from their boss. I had never seen Manigia act more like a spineless, ass-kissing weasel before. He had the most cowardly smile on his face, seemed determined to lower himself as much as possible in front of the one-armed man. The man yawned and grabbed a bottle of flavored wine on the table. Was he going to drink it? No. He couldn't drink that. I stepped forward. He grabbed the bottle, emptied it with a smile on his face, and forced everything gurgling down. It was already too late. The wine and cyanide mixture went down his throat and into his stomach. He suddenly stood up with his hand grabbing at the sofa, then he stumbled and fell. His whole body was twitching on the floor. His hand was now grabbing at his own throat. His mouth was wide open, but he couldn't breathe. The rest of the wine spilled out of the drop bottle, turning the white velvet carpet to a bright red color. The bodyguards were all panicking. Boss Ray! Boss Ray! Mr. Tough, Boss Ray is... What are you waiting for? Call an ambulance. No ambulance could be faster than cyanide, though. Almost immediately, the one-armed man died. Manigia had been sitting on the sofa as if he had been paralyzed. He kept staring at the body with an incredulous look on his face. He didn't move nor say a word until the bodyguards pointed their guns at his head. It's her. That bitch did it. She poisoned the wine. They wouldn't let anyone get away at this point. They stuffed Manigia and I into the trunk of a car. A proper greeting would be waiting for us. Alicia. Okay. Also, by the way, what I didn't mention before, but I was just thinking it, and as the story of the cat sort of went on and on, I was thinking, is that the drunk guy the father of the boy from the other story that was now in like the mental institution? Because like the description fit, like a blonde-haired guy, like blonde-haired boy. It just seemed to me a bit like role reversal, in the sense that what was being said in the story here was that it was the wife who was beating her husband, whereas from what we know of the boy, it was the other way around. That being said, we don't actually know if what the boy was saying is the truth. hence him being admitted into a mental hospital, although that of course might very well be just, you know, the father saying fuck you, basically. Well, whatever, I'm going to assume we'll find it out eventually. Okay. He crouched down. You know what? Why don't we just do this? Let's see. He put down the bottle. He then spoke to me in his drunken voice. I have won the lottery. He took another chug of the beer. I have won $1 million on. I'm going to get my son back. Sure, you won $1 million. What the cat hell did it have anything to do with me? I lowered my head and continued with my milk, ignoring the boring human. The exquisite-looking glass was smashed into pieces near my feet. The bodyguards of the one-armed men immediately raised their guns in case I tried to do something to their boss. The one-armed man himself was sitting calmly on the sofa as if he was just waiting for a show. The old man looked at the one-armed man nervously and looked back at me. He was still confused. Even though it hadn't gone as planned, I couldn't give up now. Go to hell, you dirty old monster. I bent down and picked up the largest piece of glass, but my right hand was somehow blown into pieces right before my very eyes. Well, that's not going to be an S, is it? And then I felt more bullets hitting me in the chest, shoulders, stomach, legs. I could feel the white velvet carpet touching my face. It felt so soft. Slowly, it had turned into a bright red. Okay. No, that's not even an A. Alright. Is she just going to... You know what? Why not do that? Let's see what that does. He looked at me. I looked right back at him. We stared at each other with our different-sized eyes. Of course, I had the bigger eyes. At a moment like this, I had to overpower him with my fearlessness. However, I quietly moved the milk glass behind me a little. After the standoff had lasted for a while, he stood back up defeated. He turned away and walked into the nearby lottery place. Look, I won. Stupid human. Yep. The one-armed man stared at me with a smile and emptied everything in the bottle onto the floor. The wine was turning the white velvet carpet to a bright red color. The red kept spreading, almost touching my feet. I wanted to step back, but I was paralyzed by his stare. I couldn't move my body, even 1 inch. The old man came around after a little while. Did you poison the wine? You dirty bitch! To prove his innocence in front of the one-armed man, he grabbed the fork from the dessert tray and charged towards me in a rage. No. No. You were the one that should be dead, not me, not now. I picked up the largest piece of glass from the floor and stabbed at the scumbag. He stabbed the fork into my shoulder, but I had pushed the glass into his heart. The old man made a stifled sound and he stared at me with death in his eyes. He probably had never imagined that one day he would die at the hands of one of his lab rats. I realized that nothing mattered now. I knew I wouldn't be able to survive today. Heavenly Father, forgive me. I pulled the fork out of my shoulder and stabbed it towards my own neck. I felt it touching the skin and flesh on my neck. I needed to push a little harder to pierce my skin and force it into my artery. My right hand was trembling, my eyes were watering up. I had to use my left hand to support the other one. You must be alive to enjoy life. There's no need to die in a hurry. The fork was gone from my hand. The one-armed man flung his coat over my shoulders, still smiling. Then he held my freezing, trembling hands in his one big palm. I could not remember the last time I had felt such warmth. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. That sounds like double S, yep. More post.
No puedo regresar.
Okay. Let me have a look. We have two. One for Li Wen and one for Alicia. We just did Alicia, so let's change it up a bit. Let's do Li Wen's story. Sunday afternoon. The sun was warm and the smell of the flowers was dancing in the early summer wind. I was standing in front of the exhibition center, waiting nervously. A few days ago, Mr. Wen had fainted in his apartment due to exhaustion. Fortunately, I had found him in time, otherwise the consequences would have been inconceivable. He had given me a ticket to the art exhibition today as a thank you. I had been so excited when I got the ticket that I'd forgotten to ask if it was the only ticket he had. Or would he be coming too? It also happened to be my birthday. I had not celebrated my birthday in years, but I specifically put on my favorite dress before I left my apartment. As a matter of fact, I had never heard of the exhibition's artist. To be better prepared, I had visited dozens of bookstores just to find a book of his collection. Even as late as last night, I had been looking up his work online and I hadn't gone to bed until it was almost daytime. I had set 7 alarms just to make sure that I wouldn't oversleep. At 1 p.m, the show had officially started. The line was getting shorter, but I still hadn't seen Mr. Wen. Is it perhaps Mr. Wen under a pen name, who is the artist that the exhibition belongs to? Potentially. Maybe not, but we'll see. I took out my phone and hesitated, wondering whether or not to text him. Eventually, I decided not to. Another hour had passed. I couldn't stop myself anymore and sent him a text. The art show today is really cool. Thank you so much for the ticket, Mr. Wen. I'm in the gift shop near the north entrance right now. They have a lot of cute little things here. Are you coming today too, Mr. Wen? Another hour had passed. It started to drizzle. I sent him a text. It's raining. Remember to bring an umbrella with you if you're heading out, Mr. Wen. I wandered near the entrance, but I didn't want to walk too far away. Another hour had passed. There's a book signing at the west entrance right now. I just bought an art collection book. I think it's going to be sold out soon, Mr. Wen. Would you like me to buy you a copy? Another hour had passed. Mr. Wen, I'm about to head back. Thank you again. I waited until 5 o'clock and he never showed up. Perhaps he only had one ticket in the first place. It was my fault for assuming too much. The rain had turned from a drizzle to a downpour. I walked home alone without an umbrella. I couldn't tell if it was because of the rain, but I cried. Li Wen. Okay. That sounds like a very small problem. I don't think there are any obvious leads by reading this letter. In this story, how does the difference between the west entrance and the north entrance have an impact on the result? Judging from this letter alone, you are right. We're unable to tell how they will impact the ending yet. But I would still encourage you to give it a try by switching their positions. Maybe then you'll see the effects in a new ending. Sometimes you won't know for sure without trying. So you mean that the clues might not just be in the original letters, but they might also be hidden inside the other endings that we unlock? That's exactly right. Okay. Where... Okay. West entrance. Where? Oh, there's the north entrance. Like this, I guess? I waited until 5 o'clock and he never showed up. I took off the Sir Spotty mascot costume and gave it back to the staff member at the west entrance. The staff member who had to take off earlier for an upset stomach kept thanking me. He said that if he hadn't found a stand-in before 4 p.m. he would have lost his year-end bonus. The rain had turned from a drizzle to a downpour. I walked home alone, without an umbrella. Okay. What about this? We're just heading back right at the start. It was just past 5 o'clock. A garbage truck had a sudden flat tire on the road outside the north entrance. There was garbage everywhere. The staff of the exhibition center all put on their raincoats and ran down the stairs to pick up the trash. I decided to go and help out since I wasn't doing anything anyway. Lots of people walked by and took pictures of me with their phones. I struck a pose cooperatively with a victory gesture. Look at me, I'm the guardian of the environment, Sir Spotty. It was already 7 o'clock when we were finally done, and the exhibition had been over for a while by then. My phone's battery had run out. In the end, I didn't see him. I took off the Sir Spotty mascot costume and gave it back to the staff member at the west entrance. The staff member who had to take off earlier for an upset stomach kept thanking me. Hey. Alright, so what if now we change it up to this? "6 o'clock. The rain had turned from a drizzle to a downpour. I was still standing at the entrance, waiting. The exhibition was over. My phone's battery had run out. People were coming out of the exhibition center and raising their umbrellas. There were more and more umbrellas around me. Everyone's face was hidden behind one. I was slowly swallowed in an ocean of umbrellas, and I couldn't even see the road outside anymore. I crouched down. The rain kept falling. I couldn't tell if it was because of the rain, but I cried. Okay, B. One more idea I had. Not this. This. No. Oops, no, don't show me hints yet. This? No. This? "6 o'clock. The rain had turned from a drizzle to a downpour. I was still in the Sir Spotty mascot costume, standing at the entrance. My phone's battery had run out. The exhibition was over. Yep. "Thank you so much for today. You can get out of the costume now. Again, you saved my life today." The staff member who had to take off earlier for an upset stomach kept thanking me. He said if he hadn't found a stand-in, he would have lost his year-end bonus. I was just about to pull the mascot head off when someone bumped into me. I couldn't see anything with the head on. I only knew that I was falling down the stairs. Ouch, ouch, ouch. I finally stopped at the bottom of the stairs. I suspected that every bone in my body had been broken. I highly doubt that. I was sure that I must have looked pathetic with the mud plastered all over myself. Are you okay?" The voice sounded familiar, but I couldn't be sure because of the sound from the heavy rainfall. A powerful hand grabbed my arm and pulled me up. I took the mascot head off in a hurry. I saw in front of me that same casual outfit. He raised an umbrella over my head, but his shoulders were getting wet. We ordered 2 cups of hot cocoa from the cafe on the first floor of the exhibition center and sat at a table next to the window. The rain had become so heavy that we couldn't leave, but I was feeling like the luckiest girl on earth. He told me that the exhibition was organized for a friend of his. Okay, close. He didn't know I was still here until he had seen the text just a little while ago. There had been too many people at the entrance when he arrived, and he wouldn't have been able to find me if I had not been so eye-catching. So, it was his friend's exhibition. He hadn't planned to come with me. Lightning suddenly flashed outside the window and all of the lights went out in the cafe. A waiter came over to apologize. He lit up a candle and placed it on a table. The outside view became clearer now that it was darker inside. He turned and looked outside the window towards the blurry greenish mountain far away. He suddenly changed the subject. "That mountain is called Shuanglong Mountain. In weather like this, you can see the most beautiful rainbow in the mountains when the rain stops." "Have you ever painted it?" I remembered the paintings in his apartment. The rainbow in his painting must be even more beautiful than the real one. But he shook his head. "The most beautiful views can only live on in memories." I could see the candlelight flickering in his eyes. It was supposed to be the color of warmth, but I couldn't sense any temperature. A voice suddenly surfaced from deep within my heart, and it was overcoming my own self-control. I couldn't stop myself from blurting out the question. "Mr. Wen, may..." "Do you want to go home now?" "Sorry, I forgot. It is pretty late." Mr. Wen took his eyes away from the mountain, gave me an apologizing look, and reached for an umbrella, or for the umbrella next to our seats. "No, not that. You. Could I get a picture with you?" What the hell was I talking about? I pulled out my phone in a hurry, but then I realized that the battery had run out quite a while ago. How embarrassing. I wanted to crawl into a hole. Mr. Wen took out his own phone instead and handed it to a waiter passing by. I held onto the cup of cocoa nervously and smiled like an idiot. 1, 2, 3, cheese! Let's take another one. Young lady, get a little closer to your boyfriend, please. What? Boyfriend? You don't understand, I mean, really. Before I could explain, the waiter had taken another picture. I turned my head towards him, and he was so close. The first thing I did when I finally got home was plug in my phone. As soon as I turned it back on, I received a text from Mr. Wen. It was a photo. Oops. Later, I brought a brand new photo album. I printed the photo out and put it in the first page. It was the best birthday gift I had ever gotten. Yep, that definitely sounds like an S.